This is the Regular Sports Guys with the sage Eric Norman and the boot heel Jedi Anthony Sinks. Now from the Mid-America Sports Network studios in Southeast Missouri, here's Alvin Washington.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Regular Sports Guys. Yes, folks, that is not a mistake. It is hot. It is steamy. It is officially summertime here in the heartland. But at least the boys of summer will keep us cool from here on out. Alvin Washington here at the Update Desk. Stats guy E.J. Norman riding shotgun, and our executive producer, the sage Eric Norman, in the building. Lots and lots to talk about. If you've been under a rock, the Roger Clemens trial now coming to a conclusion, and Roger Clemens, strangely enough, not guilty. We'll break that down in a little bit.
That is strange.
One of the greatest running backs in the history of the NFL, or at least this generation, has called it quits. And speaking of former San Diego Charger and New York Jet LaDanian Tomlinson, fifth best rushing back of all time. And many experts are saying first ballot Hall of Famer. We'll talk about that. The Jerry Sandusky case close to going to jury. We'll break down the NBA Finals up to this point, get you a Euro 2012 update. And something heartwarming I saw just to kick things off. Dale Earnhardt Jr. finally gets into the winner's circle after 4 years. And would you believe he does it on Father's Day in Michigan, of all places?
Oh, I'm supposed to say something about racing. That's very nice. It's very sweet. I'm very happy for him. Okay. All the other race drivers have fathers, too.
Yeah, I know.
And
but
perhaps some of them have died as well. So, okay.
True, but it's been a minute since Dale Earnhardt Jr. hit winner's circle, and the fans just went absolutely belligerent when the 88 car, sporting a dark night paint scheme this time around, crossed the finish line up at Michigan International Speedway. So congrats to Dale Jr. Hopefully he can string a few more together and maybe get his first ever career Sprint Cup championship. That having been said, a little pop quiz to start things off. 3 St. Louis Cardinals have been privileged to be named National League Comeback Player of the Year. 2 of them have done it twice. Who are the trio? Don't tell me I've stumped the sage here.
You probably have. I've never really paid that much attention to Comeback Player of the Year awards.
Tino Martinez.
Oh, God, no. Please, no.
Tino Martinez. Wow. Let's see. I got to think. Stan Musial.
Nope.
Bob Gibson.
Mm-mm.
No?
Neither of those.
Can you give me the decade?
3 different decades.
Well, give me a decade.
All right.
I want to say Chris Carpenter.
That's one of them, believe it or not.
That's probably the last one.
Lance Berkman.
No.
Oh.
So that's the 2000s. Give me another decade.
Well, I'll give you the trio. It's a matter of...
No, give me a chance.
You really
don't know. You don't know, do you? You don't know the years.
You really want to figure this one out? Okay.
Well, you threw it out
I'll give you the... Okay, let's go with the 90s then.
The 90s. Who would have been in the 90s? Ray Langford?
No.
No, not Ray Langford?
Mm-mm.
Huh. Who would have had a really good season after a crappy season? Because that's really what it is you totally sucked one year and then played good the next is really what it come back there. Let's see. Wouldn't be more.
Now I'll give you a key here. They don't necessarily have to have been a Cardinal at the time that they won.
Oh well, then of course I don't know.
All right.
Who were they?
I'll give you the trio. You had Chris Carpenter.
Yeah.
Andres Galarraga, a former Cardinal in 1992.
What's that in English?
Galarraga.
Thank you.
Good Lord.
Thank you.
Andres Galarraga is a former NL Comeback Player of the Year. And the man we get to celebrate a birthday this week, also is a National League Comeback Player of the Year. That happens to have been the former all-time steals champion Lou Brock. Lou Brock celebrating a birthday on June 18th, as did Andres Galarraga. So happy birthday to...
What year did Lou Brock win the Comeback Player of the Year?
1979, his final year with the Cardinals.
Well, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Well, okay, so 2 of those were the Cardinals. One of them wasn't the Cardinals. Okay. Well, he did have a good year in 79. Going back to Andres Galarraga, that was a mistake by the Cardinals.
I think it was, too.
He hit 15 home runs in after the All-Star game for the Cardinals in big Busch Stadium. Okay, that's when they had all the AstroTurf. Coming off a broken wrist. And they decided, and this was back in the days where the Brewery was just totally screwing up the ball club. And Dal Maxwell was the general manager. It's just one of those things. Guy hits 15 home runs in the second half of a season, which extrapolates out to over 30 home runs in a season, which was a lot in baseball back then.
Especially in Old Busch.
Yeah, huge in Old Busch. And the Cardinals let him go to the Rockies, where he just...
With their former hitting coach.
Yeah, well, whatever. I'm just saying that he goes to the Rockies and just, I don't know, wins the batting title, was up there, triple, what's the thing?
The Triple Crown.
Close to a Triple Crown in hitting of baseball. And the Cardinals just dumped him and let him go in the expansion draft to the Rockies. And he made him relevant, and they got into the playoffs. They didn't do anything, but they got into the playoffs 2 years after their inception.
And they're 20 years old this year, as a matter of fact. They've had some playoffs. They've gotten an NL pennant. So hats off to the Rockies for their success.
Well, it's just somebody. If the Cardinals had kept him,
I'd say they make the '93 series.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, they didn't make it. I don't know. It's just the thing was, here was a guy that could play. A guy that could hit home runs in Busch Stadium, which hadn't been done since Jack Clark. Okay. So it had been 4 or 5 years since they had anyone that could really hit the ball with authority. And they just let him go for nothing. Nothing.
And I honestly think, looking at the career of the Big Cat, who started his career in Montreal, of all places, if the Cardinals kept him, I strongly think he would have been one of the better hitting first baseman of all time, because of what Busch did to him that last half of the season. You look at maybe those years with the Rockies, he would have stayed with St. Louis. You could have picked up another 2 or 3 pennants. He was just that good.
Well, Joe Torre was the manager. You have to think that Torre might have been able to do something with Andres Galarraga. I mean, let's go back. Who was their first baseman in the 90s? Let me think.
I want to say it wasn't Hernandez.
Hernandez was long gone by that point. They had Greg Jeffries for a while, and he was nothing but New York Met hype. Oh, my goodness. Let's see. In 96, it was John Mabry, part of 97, and then Tony got mad and traded him. Then they got McGuire in the late 90s. Or they got McGuire in 97. And he was there.
He was there through the home run chase and
2000. So trying to go back to the early 90s. I guess it was Greg Jeffries, who topped out at 12 or 14 home runs for the Cardinals. Never drove in that. He came up and they just thought he was going to be the next great Met. Cardinals got him, and he was okay, but they never competed. Let's face it.
Spell Greg's.
Jeffries, J.
Okay, I see the spelling now. It's 2 E. It's 3 E's, not 2 E's. He played with the Cardinals 93 and 94.
Yeah. And let's face it. Bob Tewksbury's a friend of mine. He's been on our show. He was the number 1 pitcher. If that tells you anything about how the Brewery treated the Cardinals, they would not go and get the players that Joe Torre needed to win a pennant. Their attitude back then was, we would just soon finish second, a close second, get people in here, but not have to pay the salaries for a winning team.
Doesn't that sound a little bit like their neighbors tore up 55 a bit?
Cubs or White Sox?
Just do enough. Do enough to be relevant. That way that gets the fans' hopes up and they flood Wrigley Field like they've done for so many years.
That's what the Cardinals did after old man Gussie died in '89. But, I mean, he had been kind of out of it for the last few years anyway. But the guys that ran the brewery were bean counters. They were money men. They weren't baseball men. And so to them, hey, the place is full. We're selling beer. We're selling tickets. And we don't have to pay top salary. I don't know that the Cubs have done that so much. I really don't know enough about the Cubs. I would think, though, with the Tribune owning... No, hear me out. Let me finish. With the Tribune, I don't see that with the Tribune owning them because they own WGN. Okay? So the better they did, the better their ratings would be. And so, and trust me, had they won a World Series, they'd be the toast of Chicago for 30 years.
True. Here's where I beg to differ, having tracked those same teams over that span of time. If, in fact, they were really serious about winning, then they should have won with Andre Dawson. They should have won with Mark Grace, and they did for a little bit. They should have won, but they should have won with the teams that had the talent to go. They had those guys. They had Ryan Sandberg, Hall of Famer, who I still think got jobbed for the Cubs managing position, but that's just me. They've had a lot of good talent come through there, but for whatever strange reason, either the team was just not able to put it together, or the management was just so piss poor that that same feeling fed to the players, and they really didn't do their best.
Well, if you go back to 1984, they lost to the Padres. And, hey, Leon Durham let a ball go right between his legs. I mean, you can't plan that out, and Leon Durham had a pretty good year. 89, they lost to the Giants in the playoffs. And
then 98.
Well, 98, they just blew it. Okay, and, they may say, well, Bartman. Bartman was one of three guys reaching for that ball. It just happened to hit his hands.
No, I put that one on the shortstop.
Then on the next play, the shortstop, the ball goes right between his legs. Easy double play, and they're out of it. And then, hey, they still had Game 7. And they still had, Kerry Wood going in Game 7? Was it Kerry Wood or Mark Pryor? Mark Pryor was pitching Game 6. Kerry would have pitched Game 7. And was that 98?
That was.
Or was that 2003?
I want to say that was 98.
No, that was 2003.
No, it was 03 because they played the Marlins that year. That was the Bartman incident.
Yeah, 98. I don't remember.
No, they played the Padres again in 98.
Are you sure?
Because the Padres have been to the World Series twice, and they got so because of us.
Okay, the Padres beat the Braves.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's right. There were 2 rounds that year. Honestly, I don't remember it. I remember them beating the Braves. The Padres beating the Braves. I don't remember them beating the Cubs.
Well, anyway, moving back over to Birdland, we were celebrating the birthday boys, Andres Galarraga for one. But the other guy I want to focus on is Lou Brock, the pride of El Dorado, Arkansas. He turned 73 back on June 18th. Now, oddly enough, he wanted to try out for the Cardinals initially, but the scout was somewhere up in Seattle signing Ray Washburn. So that's how he wound up in Chicago initially.
And did they appreciate him?
Oh, God, no. The most lopsided trade, I believe, in Cardinals history, or at least one of the most lopsided in Major League history.
To defend the Cubs and Ernie Broglio, the year before, Broglio had won 20 games. Okay. And he was, he never did much for the Cubs. But at the same time, Brock had not done that much for the Cubs. It's when he got to St. Louis And they put him in the leadoff spot. He was batting all over the place for the Cubs. You know, he wasn't the speedster. This is a guy that actually hit a home run dead center field at the Polo Grounds. And for anyone who doesn't know about the Polo Ground was a horseshoe-shaped stadium where you could hit a cheap home run down the lines, but hitting a home run out to center field was near impossible.
Oh, yeah.
You're looking at least 500-something feet.
Yeah.
That's what really amazed me at his great catches. Mm-hmm. Even if it wasn't a home run, it would have been easily a triple or more.
Right.
And he caught it.
Yeah, that's true. So when he got to St. Louis, they said, "You're the leadoff man. Get comfortable." And that's when his career took off.
I kind of venture to believe that Lou had wanted to play with the Cardinals all along. It's just maybe the Cubs gave him that opportunity to be in the majors from the get-go. Now with the trade between him and Broly and a few others, he finally felt at home, and that's why he was able to do what he did.
Yeah. What's kind of interesting was Brock had 1 year of 20 home runs. But then there was 1 year where Bob Gibson hit more home runs than Lou Brock.
Oh, wow.
I think he had 7 home runs and Brock had 6. Well, of course, Gibson let Brock know it because the next batter was always Brock. He was always the leadoff guy. And Gibson, being a pitcher, would bat ninth. So when he came in to take his handshakes, he would always tell Brock, "See, that's how it's done."
I tell you what, though. The immediate impact of that 1964 trade coming out to be a World Series championship cannot be overlooked. Not that nor the 1967 title.
Well, and they won the National League pennant in '68 as well. Even going back to that, he was a lot of the reason why the Cardinals won, but a lot of the reason why the Cardinals won was the Phillies collapsed in September of '64. They had a 10-game lead, or they had a 6-game lead with 10 games to go. And
almost Red Sox-ish?
What do you mean, almost Red Sox-ish?
In other words, the Red Sox had a commanding lead going into, let's say, the final stretch. In this case, the Sox had a lead going into the final month.
Yeah, well, this was the Phillies in '64 had led the National League almost wire to wire. And with 2 weeks to go in the season, they lost 10 games in a row. And the Cardinals won it on the last game of the season. And I can't remember if they won that last game of the year or they lost it, but somebody else lost, so they were able to be in it. I can't remember now exactly. I'd have to look it up. But they came out of nowhere. Well, in '64, there was no playoffs. The playoffs didn't start until 1969.
With the expansion.
Yeah, there was an expansion that year, but there was also an expansion in '61. But when they did the expansion in '69, they went ahead and made 2 divisions, an East and West division. And the first one was the Mets and the Braves in '69, which it's everyone talks about the Mets going and winning the World Series. It's really a shame that the '69 Braves didn't win, because they had a heck of a team with Hank Aaron, Orlando Cepeda, Rico Cardi, Ralph Garr. They just had an interesting team. Anyway, going back
to that '64 season, as I pulled that up, 2 very interesting events going on as we are in the Cardinals clubhouse. We'll get to the present-day Cardinals on our next segment, but just visiting with the likes of birthday boy Lou Brock, who's now 73 as of June 18th. And that '64 season was kind of interesting. You mentioned the Phillies were up by 10 games, but a whole month prior to that, the Cardinals fired Bing Devine, who got them Lou Brock.
Yeah.
And they were 9.5 games out of first place on August 16th.
Yeah, August Busch had a tendency to be temperamental, so he fired him, and I think he promoted Stan Musial.
No, I think Musial, if I'm looking at this right, Musial had just retired the year prior.
Mm-hmm. He was their general manager in the '60s. Now, whether he was the general manager in 1964, I'm not entirely sure of that. You may be right. He was the GM in '67, maybe '66, and then '68, something like that.
You're talking about Musial?
Yeah, Stan Musial.
Also during that year...
Well, also they're going to fire their manager. and they started winning games.
DeRocher.
Nope, Johnny Keane. Johnny Keane was the manager of the Cardinals. He was going to get fired. August Busch brought in DeRocher mid-season to talk to him, and he was going to get the job if he was working for the Dodgers then. Mm-hmm. If they did fire Johnny Keane, and they were all set to pull the trigger, well, they started winning ball games.
And so that's how Keane kept his job.
That's how Keane kept his job. Well, Keane found out about it, and when they beat the Yankees in the World Series after the season, he really didn't have a contract. The Yankees signed Johnny Keane.
Wow.
But unfortunately for them, the team fell apart, and they ended up firing Keane a couple years ago. DeRocher, I guess they called DeRocher, and they're talking to him. He said, listen, best thing you guys can do is promote Red Schoendienst.
That's how Cheney's got to be manager.
He got the Cardinals.
I see also in that same 1964 season that Brock came over, a young prospect came up through the ranks that we know well now is the current voice of the Cardinals. That would be Mike Shannon.
Mm-hmm. He was a right fielder on the 64 team. When they got Roger Maris, he switched to third base. And 67, 68 World Series and 2 pennants. And then he got that kidney disease and had to quit the game. And it's really a shame because he was in the going into the prime of his career. Yeah, I don't think he'd have been a Hall of Famer by any stretch of the imagination. But he was, he was a starter in the National League. And who's to say the Cardinals couldn't have won more? I'll tell you, the Cardinals had good teams. They just didn't have enough. Now, 69, they finished third. But 71 they finished second. 73 they finished second. 74 they finished second.
The finishing second so you can fill the seats attitude.
No, they just honestly didn't have enough superstars. And back then, see, they still had the collective. They still had the whatever was ruled on that allowed free agency in the mid 70s.
Okay, the flood rule.
Well, it was started by Curt Flood. But it would led to... See, they had this... there was a term, and my mind's gone blank.
Reserve clause?
The reserve clause. Okay? So teams were not going to get rid of great players. Teams didn't a lot of times sell their stars off like they do now because of free agency.
What? That sounds a little bit like the franchise tag that the NFL has.
Yeah, it is. It was kind of a thing. So it wasn't like they could pick somebody up back then. Free agency has changed the game, all right, because of the contracts. Okay, and if a guy is going to be leaving the team, if a team is doing poorly, they're going to trade the guy to get something out of him from another team. That didn't happen all that much, as I recall. There would be trades, but there was never big trades growing up that I remember during the season. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
And I'm sitting here trying to think, you'd have big trades in the off-season when teams were trying to build their team up and get ready for spring training. But during the season, so, you would pick up a Sonny Siebert. Okay, that's a name. You would pick up a pitcher that was maybe the number 5 starter. And they had no interest in him next year. They're going to bring somebody else up. But if you were a number 1 or 2 starter, you weren't going anywhere. But now if you're a 1 or 2 starter and you're going toward free agent and your team's already in 4th place or 3rd place and you don't have much chance, what are you going to do? Hey, trade him. If you can't sign him, you're going to trade his butt and get as many prospects as you can get to a contender.
Well, I'll tell you what. We'll continue the Cardinals clubhouse in our next segment, but as we go to break, just looking back at that 1964 team, the first by the birthday boy Lou Brock, who celebrates his 73rd birthday, a first ballot Hall of Famer, as a matter of fact, and a 6-time All-Star. Here are some of the other men that he was fortunate enough to be with. Tim McCarver, Bob Uecker, we mentioned Curt Flood, who 3 years after that 64 championship started everything that got us to free agency. Dave Dowling, Bob Gibson.
Who's Dave Dowling?
I believe Dave Dowling, and I might be thinking this wrong. I believe he was the one who went to no, he didn't go to the Dodgers. My mistake. He played only one season with the Cardinals, and that was the 64 season as a pitcher.
Yeah. I never heard of him.
Ray Washburn, the man who Lou Gibson was passed up for initially when Gibson looked to try out for the Cardinals.
You mean Brock?
No. When Brock initially tried out. Joe Morgan, Mike Shannon.
Joe Morgan wasn't on that team.
Well, it said for other batters, Joe Morgan. Well, actually, Joe Morgan, the manager. Not Joe Morgan. Not that Joe Morgan.
Yeah.
That Joe Morgan.
Okay. Well, no, the one you're missing is Bill White.
Bill White was getting ready to get to him, as was Ken Boyer. Was also on that 64 team.
Yeah, that was the 64 most valuable player.
Mm-hmm. Roger Craig was also on that 64 club, too.
Yeah, he was on a reliever. Dick Grote was on that team.
Mm-hmm.
He was a star. He was a starter and was considered a star on the team. Julian Javier was the second baseman, except he got hurt and didn't get to play in the World Series, so Dal Maxwell played second base.
And we mentioned Johnny Keane. Also, the coaches on that club were Vern Benson, Howie Pollitt, Red Shindeist.
Shane Deist.
I will get that man's name right one of these days, who later became the manager of the club, and Joe Schultz. Let's take a break. We'll come back and talk about the present-day Cardinals, who are still hanging on to third place and still looking good, as we see. Hanging tough in that always tough NL Central. Stay right here, or Cardinals Clubhouse after this on the Regular Sports Guys.
Hey, I'm Andy Griggs, asking you to help prevent domestic violence. Domestic violence isn't a woman's issue. It hurts all of us. Women are injured and killed every day by their husbands and boyfriends. So it's time for men to take action right now to teach boys that violence against women is wrong, to help prevent abuse before it starts. Call the Family Violence Prevention Fund at 1-800-END-ABUSE to get a free Take Action kit containing tips on what to say to boys. That's 1-800-END-ABUSE. Teach early.
Back here on the Regular Sports Guys, we rock and roll with so much soul in the barn and trying to cool down after a recent heat wave. But the bats are heating up, at least we hope, here in Birdland. Alvin Washington alongside stats guy E.J. Norman, executive producer the Sage Eric Norman joining us. And don't forget, Sports Talk 24/7. You know where to go, theregularsportsguys.com. Continuing with the Cardinals clubhouse, our present day Birds on the bat, still sitting third in the NL Central at 34-33. Right now, after a loss to the cross-state rival Kansas City Royals, who for some strange reason are still in the thick of the AL Central race, but enough about them. Looking at the latest trends of our Redbirds, somehow they've kind of been able to ward off those harrowing 3+ game losing streaks that they had earlier in the spring. However, they haven't been able to win more than 2 games in a row as of late. The last 2-game win streak was against the White Sox late last week. Westbrook looked good. Lance Lynn, correct?
What about him?
10-2 right now. Mm-hmm. With the 1-0 win, a very rare 1-0 win this season by the St. Louis Cardinals.
Well, I'll tell you what. He's pitching tonight against Verlander. I plan on trying to watch that along with the NBA Finals. I'll tell you what. Sunday was absolutely one of the worst games I've ever seen the Cardinals play.
It was agonizing.
Oh, it was horrible.
And it went 15 innings.
I was trying to go between that and soccer matches, and those are over. It was like still the 13th, and I mean, they could not do anything.
I was wanting to watch the U.S. Open, but I got to watching the Cardinals. That play, it was the 5th inning. The Cardinals were losing 1-0. Second and third, no outs. And for some reason, Matheny got it into his head. Let's do a squeeze play with Adam Wainwright at the bat. And Wainwright had just blasted one foul down the right field line out of play.
One of the longest home runs in Busch, I think, was hit by Adam Wainwright.
You're right. He hit one right center, left center.
It was a big one. I mean, one of the longest.
And what happened was he missed the ball. Tyler Green got caught between third and home, Then Wainwright struck out, and then Descalso came up and made the third out of the inning.
Wow.
So they went from second and third, no outs, to nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Well, you can pin that one on Matheny.
Yep. Well, no, it got worse. Okay. Then they got a 2-1 lead with 2 outs and 2 strikes in the ninth, and Mott threw the same pitch to the guy 3 pitches in a row, and he took the third one and parked it into the bullpen.
Oh, goodness.
You know, instead of throwing a breaking ball, a curveball, a slider, anything else.
3 straight fastballs.
3 straight 4-seam fastballs. And he'd gotten through the first 2 guys, but, hey, waste a pitch. Let's see what the guy will do. Instead, he threw one high and tight, and the guy just led with his hands, shorted that swing, got the barrel of the bat on there, and that thing just flew off that bat. It was a 98-mile-an-hour fastball. Okay. Well, then, I don't know. It was a horrible, horrible game. And that decision by Matheny, that ranks up there with starting Donovan Osborne in Game 7 against the Braves.
Oh, wow.
96 series.
That bad?
Oh, well, when you got Andy Bennis on the bench as your best pitcher, but you decide, I'm going to wait and use him in the World Series, so you use Donovan Osborne.
No, I'm not talking about that. We don't know that was.
And then you don't even get to the World Series. Okay, I'm trying to think of a stupider play I've seen the Cardinals make. Decision by manager. I know Tony would constantly fiddle with the pitchers, and sometimes that didn't work. But you've got Daniel Descalso coming up next, and then you got Carlos Beltran coming up after that.
Let him swing away.
Just let Wainwright strike out. I don't care. But
at least it's just 1 out with second and third.
Yep. So you got the top of the order. At one point, some pitcher, I'm trying to think who the pitcher was, he's going to first base. He's fielding the ball. The guy's right next to him, running down the line with him. All he's got to do is take his glove and go tap.
Didn't do it.
And the guy, he went for the bag, and the guy beat him to the bag.
Oh, wow.
And then they get to the 15th inning and give up a 2-run homer.
Oh.
By that time, I didn't care who won. I want that game to be over.
Well, I cared, but I did. The game should have been over earlier. Mott should have thrown another pitch. Matheny should have done something else in the 5th inning. Plus, they had 2 back-to-back home runs in the next inning. Beltran and Holiday, I think, Holiday and Craig hit back-to-backs for the 2-1 lead.
Well, kind of put things in retrospect. Since the month has started, the Cardinals have so far won only 2 of the 5 series that they've played so far. That includes the Kansas City series that just ended on Sunday. They beat the White Sox 2 out of 3. They beat Houston 2 out of 3. And both of those series featured a Lance Lynn win, who right now is 10-2, still is the ace of the ball club.
I think the problem is, if one thing that jumps out to me is they have a feast or famine offense. They'll have 10 runs in one game, 14 runs in another, and then do nothing the next game. The other thing is that Matheny is not doing a good job with the bullpen. Now, having said that, I'm really starting to miss Dave Duncan. Really, really, really bad at the moment.
I'm starting to be of the same mindset as well, because at least you have a steadying force that had been with the ball club for so many years. Mm-hmm. Granted, it was under Tony La Russa, but you knew when Dave Duncan was there, he had a great mind and a great handle on the pitching staff.
Well, Tony deferred to Dave. Okay, as much as he changed pitchers all the time, all right, if Duncan said you don't need to go with this guy, Tony pretty much was deferred to Duncan on this. I don't know that Matheny's doing that with Lilliquist. Also, I keep thinking that, had Dave McKay been there, not Dave McKay, who's the guy that is with Houston now? He was he wasn't the bullpen coach, he was the bench coach. I thought he was an infielder for the Oakland Athletics at one time. I've met him. He's a nice guy. Shoot.
I can tell you're a bench coach right now.
The bench coach now is Mike Aldretti. See if you can look up Houston Astros coaches, and you'll see him there.
I will say.
Anyway, if that guy had been there, I cannot believe they would have tried that suicide squeeze. And Matheny took the blame. He said, we meant to do a safety squeeze. But I'm like, you're down by 1 run in the 5th. Why would you bother?
They might as well have done a safety dance.
Wow.
It's in your head now, isn't it?
Yeah. S-S-S-A-A-A-F-F-F-F. Anyway, who's that? Did you come across that coach?
Joe Bettini.
Joe Bettini.
Yeah, I knew I heard that name.
Yeah. I think if Bettini had been there, I think that he should have been hired. But I think Mazaliak and Matheny and, they decided, let's just do a clean slate with all new coaches and all new thing. I would have kept Bettini. He was a good guy. But maybe he was afraid he'd always have to be looking over his shoulder with Bettini on the bench. Anyway, and I like Mike Matheny. I really do. He's a great guy. But right now, we're just going to have to accept the fact that he's learning on the job.
Well, he's also learning on the job with a MASH unit of all-stars.
Yeah.
And that really is not helping matters at all.
Not that Schumacher's an all-star, but he's supposed to be back with the team now. John Jay is I think, going to start some rehab games. The paper today, Carpenter is doing more pitching off the mound now, and they said he threw some breaking balls.
Good.
So it may be by July 1st he's with the team.
We hope he has a great second half like he did last year.
I'll tell you what, we need it would be nice to have him and Lynn and Wainwright. I guess Garcia may be out for the season. They don't know yet.
Really?
Well, they talked about in the paper today that they're going to have him do exercises, but he's got a bit of a torn labrum, bit of a tear in the rotator cuff. They're hoping they can build the muscles up.
So to offset that?
To offset that. I got the feeling they're going to screw around just like they've done so many other times. Let me put it this way. If they don't have immediate results, they need to shut him down and have the surgery. Because if not, they'll screw around till August. All right? Easily August, if not September. And finally say, well, we tried, now we have to have surgery. And he'll be out all next year. He'll miss spring training. If there's a problem and you don't see immediate results, just shut him down and get him ready for next year's spring training.
Fair enough. That having been said, the power numbers are still there. I mean, I don't know how, I don't know why.
Because they're in one game. Listen, Freese against Houston had 6 RBIs. All right? Check how many RBIs he had out in the month before that. He'd lucky to have had 6. But he had them all in one game. And it's a game they won 14-2.
That's the best game he's had almost all year.
Yeah.
And he hasn't done anything since, honestly.
No. So they're having great games, but it's not spread out. God, I wish they would get Berkman back. That's who I want to see back in the lineup. Well, if he doesn't want to play first base, well, then don't make him.
Well, I don't know if it's making him play first base, or as is, how serious is this injury that they've been quasi-mum about for most of the spring?
That's the way the Cardinals always do things.
Cardiac guards.
No, just Tony. I'll never forget. When did Isringhausen get hurt? 2006. That's the only time I've ever called the Cardinals and complained in my life. But Isringhausen totally blew a game. Totally blew it. All right? It was nails on a chalkboard against the Washington Nationals, who were in last place. All right? And there was such an outcry that Tony felt like he had to go and chastise us because he said, well, he's been playing hurt. Well, if you'd told us we'd been playing hurt, we may not have been yelling at him. But here's another thought. What are you having a guy play hurt close games for you where he can't succeed? Oh, my goodness.
The mind that is Tony La Russa.
I don't miss him one stinking bit. Other than maybe for 5 minutes Sunday when they tried to do the squeeze play. Then I might have missed Tony for 5 minutes. But other than that, hey, listen, if anything, as President Obama would say, it being a teachable moment, I hope Mike Matheny learned something.
Well, I'll tell you what, Yadier Molina is having a pretty dang blang good year.
He's the best catcher in baseball.
326 batting average, with 37 batted in, 15 doubles. That leads the team. He's got 9 home runs, which I think is probably among his better numbers in recent memory.
Where's McCann at? Can you look up?
Who?
Ethan, would you look up Brian McCann's numbers? Let's see what McCann's doing, because that's usually been the best hitting catcher, at least in the National League.
Well, behind him, Carlos Beltran, still very strong, battling a robust 306 with 48 batted in. That 48 RBIs does lead the team, as do the 19 home runs. However, he is whiffed 51 times, has been caught stealing a team-high 3 out of 10 times this year.
Okay, so he stole 7 bases.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's all right. Especially when you consider the fact he's still a year and a half off knee surgery. What's McCann's numbers?
Batting average 240 with 9 homers, 31 RBIs.
How many RBIs does Yachty have?
Yachty has 37 with a 326 average.
Yachty could. Well, I don't want to get the cart before the horse kind of scenario. But Yachty could finally win a Silver Slugger Award.
He could. Like I said, these are some of the better numbers that he's had, at least to this point of the season.
Well, every year it's usually been, for the last 5 years, it's been Brian McCann. That better power and better, more. He's just been a lot better hitter. Not a better catcher, but he's been a lot better hitter than Yachty. And this year, at batting only 248 with comparable power numbers, it'd have to go in Yachty's direction at this point.
So potentially a first ever sweep of awards at that position for Yachty, if he does indeed keep this up.
Well, if he wins the Gold Glove, well, sure, but that's not guaranteed. So, but who's a better defender than Yachty that you know of? I mean,
not too many.
The only one that took one from him was Russell Martin, and he's in the American League with the Yankees now. So anyway, they're going again. Once again, it seems like every year they got to go to Detroit, so that's where they go tonight. They play, and it'll be Lance Lynn versus Justin Verlander, which that sounds like a very interesting pitching matchup.
Yeah,
I'll say
defending MVP and Cy Young winner against our, surprise of the year.
Once again, with the Tigers, they were talking about how they were going to be the team last year, like they were talking about the Phillies last year, and they've had a tough season so far. What a shame. I hope they're still bad at least for the next 3 games.
Tell you what, though.
I hope they suck for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
These 86 strikeouts out the hole by Lance Lynn are very impressive with the 10-2 mark.
Who saw it coming? No one. This is the guy that came out to the mound in Game 5, and Tony said, "What are you doing out here?"
That has to be one of the most infamous moments in World Series memory. Because I'm like, it's almost as laughable as the "Who's on first" routine.
Well, let me tell you something. Tony helped us beat the Phillies. Tony helped us beat the Brewers. I'm not sure that Tony really helped us beat the Texas Rangers. It was not his best time. So, anyway, I am missing Dave Duncan. I will say that much. I'll go back to that. I wish Dave Duncan was with this team. Because I'll tell you what, there's another example. They've overused Zepchinski way too much and exposed him to too many right-handed hitters.
I think Zepchinski needs to go. I honestly do.
No. If you look at him against lefties, they're like 214. The problem is right-handed hitters are like 325. Okay? He doesn't need to pitch against right-handed hitters. Strictly lefties. Maybe you can throw a righty in there because you got another lefty behind him. Because J.C. Romero did nothing, and he was released. All right, so the only lefty we got, I believe. Oh, well, they brought up this new kid, Sam. My mind's gone blank.
Well, was that one of the young men we were talking about last week in that minor league roundup?
Yeah, and it turns out he's no longer with the AAA Memphis. He's with the Cardinals. Sam something.
Kelly?
No, that's Joe Kelly. Quit messing with that. Look it up.
You have a computer, too.
I'll pull him up real quick. Pitchers. Are we referring to Sam Freeman?
Sam Freeman. That's it.
rather diminutive young fella too. 5'11".
Yeah, he's not big. He's
out of Houston, Texas. Just 24 years old.
Reminds me of Oil Can Boyd.
Oh, really?
Well, skinny, long-limbed, thin black guy like Oil Can Boyd. I mean, you know.
Hey, why not?
Well, I mean, Oil Can Boyd was not a big guy. Pretty thin. Looked like he had an extremely high metabolism, probably from doing cocaine.
Yeah.
Though I wouldn't say that about Sam Freeman. But he looks like he's got some talent. Now, whether he can put it all together is another matter.
Well, let's switch gears from the Cardinals to the rest of Major League Baseball. How about R.A. Dickey of the Mets? Back-to-back, one-hit complete games. Hasn't happened in the National League in eons. Hasn't happened in Major League Baseball since Dave Steve did it in '88. And he did it both times with a knuckleball. Yeah.
It's really amazing, the fact that, you know, like if you'd watch Tim Wakefield, man, they were crushing everything off of him last year because it didn't drop. It didn't scoot or skip. This guy, pitching fantastic. You know, I remember, though, when I was growing up, there was Wilbur Wood, there was Joe and Phil Necro, and then there was a guy named Hoyt Wilhelm. And I think there was another guy named Woody Fryman that was a knuckleballer. There used to be a lot more knuckleballers.
You remember Charlie Huff?
Yeah.
Charlie Huff was when I started hearing about knuckleballers.
Mm-hmm.
Him, Wilhelm, I think I might have vaguely remembered. I remember the Necro Brothers.
Don't you remember Wilbur Wood?
No, Wilbur Wood was well before my time, I believe.
Do you know who he pitched for?
Gosh, the Cubs?
Look him up. You're going to be so embarrassed.
It better not be the White Sox.
Just look him up.
All right. Wilbur Wood. That's Burr with a U.
Nice guy. I got to meet him one time.
Pitched with the White Sox.
Wow!
But he was before I even got a chance to get to even watch baseball because he retired in '78.
Look at his stats.
14 under 11 strikeouts, 3.24 ERA, 164 and 156.
Okay. Now, look at his years in the 70s. Can you break it down by what he did?
He spent the last 12 years of his 18-year career with the White Sox.
Okay.
I didn't.
Okay, do you see any of his stats, though?
I'm looking at 1,411 strikeouts.
No, just year by year. Do you have that?
No, unfortunately, I don't have a year by year.
Like 4 straight years of over 20 victories.
Well, but you're talking about a time when you still had starting pitchers go the distance. Mm-hmm. You don't have that anymore.
Well, but he was a fantastic pitcher in the 70s. So, anyway.
And the wild thing,
he got me tickets to the last game of Comiskey Field.
Wow. 3-time All-Star. Last time, of course, being 74. And the White Sox is where he got all but one of his career wins.
Yeah, he started off with the Red Sox. He's from Massachusetts.
Yep. Going back into the mix here. R.A. Dickey, I watch his knuckleball, and it's a lot faster than your usual knuckleball. Mm-hmm. Because it's almost like it's a change-up in disguise.
Well, I've just seen him pitch a few times. The fact is when you don't see many knuckleballs and you're used to gearing up for a fastball or a slider, you know, that thing just dances on him, and he's pitching great. He's been an interesting story. He wrote a book this last offseason, where he talked about being molested as a child. And he revealed that and what he's had to overcome mentally or emotionally through his life. He's a great guy. And I'll tell you what's his record right now? Do you have that information?
He's 11-1 as of that last one-hitter.
Him and Lynn were tied for a while for league leading wins.
Not only that, but he's also leading the league in strikeouts with 103.
Yeah, his ERA for the last 5 games is 0.
I mean, the thing, 6 years ago, he was playing for the Orioles under Buck Showalter. He had
I don't think Buck Showalter was with the Orioles 6 years ago.
Not the Orioles, the Rangers, excuse me. And the last game he pitched was a for the Rangers was a 6 home run debacle for him. So to see him go from that to 11-1, back-to-back one-hitters with one of the fiercest knuckleballs in recent memory, if not all time, says a lot not only about him, but I think just about how this game treats those who put it together.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm happy for the guy. I am really. The guy has. Even before you heard about that book, here was a guy that had rebuilt his career and just playing great. Now he's let's face it, 11-1. Who wouldn't want to be 11-1 right now?
Wow. Well, I'll tell you what, let's take another break. We'll still talk some baseball, but this time we'll go from one of the great success stories to a story that has been pretty much worn out since it started about maybe 3 or 4 years ago. The Roger Clemens perjury trial and what this now not guilty verdict may or may not do for the Rockets' chances of getting into the Hall of Fame. More baseball after this. It's the Regular Sports Guys.
You must be your fairy godmother. Yes.
It doesn't take a fairy godmother to tell you that the right fit means everything.
Good heavens, child. You can't go in that.
Children under 4'9" need to be in a booster seat because they aren't ready for adult safety belts alone. Remember that 4'9" is the magic number, and get your little pumpkin there safely in a booster seat.
Oh, thank you.
For more information, visit boosterseat.gov. This has been a message from the U.S. Department of Transportation and the Ad Council.
Back here on the Regular Sports Guys, still talking about doing it all between the lines. Those white lines that separate 4 bases, that is. Alvin Washington alongside his stats guy, E.J. Norman. The Sage Eric Norman, our executive producer, also riding shotgun as we continue to talk baseball. Don't forget, you can talk sports 24/7 with us online, theregularsportsguys.com. As we stay in baseball, this just in from the commissioner's office. Phillies rookie infielder Freddie Galvis out for 50 games. Guess why? Banned substance. Apparently, a tiny speck of clostebol, deemed a performance-enhancing substance, was found in Galvis' urine. This afternoon, Galvis saying he was disappointed, but he said the rules are rules and I will be suspended. So at least he's being a man about it. Is it kind of time to just kind of really revamp the substance list to look at if some of these really are performance enhancers?
Well, that question came out of nowhere.
And the reason I'm saying this is because we're getting ready to get into the Roger Clemens trial. And Roger Clemens, on the day before this podcast, found not guilty of perjury as it pertains to him taking performance-enhancing drugs. I tend to believe he did.
Well, let's just state that he had some pretty lousy years toward the end of his career at Boston. And then he goes to Toronto, and he becomes a god on the pitching mound, like he had been at the beginning of his career. And then that carried him how many more years?
Well, he wound up going to, I think, 2 other teams, including his hometown, Houston Astros.
Well, he went to the Yankees. He went from absolutely nothing in Boston to 2 Cy Young Awards in Toronto. And then he helped the Yankees.
He helped the Yankees to the 2000 World Championship. Actually, to the 99 and 2000 World Championships.
Mm-hmm.
Did 3 years with the Stros, and then finally wound up his career with the Yankees after some 24 seasons. 354 and 184 with over 4,600 strikeouts. Normally, those numbers are Hall of Fame numbers. Again, to wit, Roger Clemens is a part of that group of players that was caught up in the initial steroid scandal. And a number of scribes from many publications that we know are still saying that even this not guilty verdict does not acquit him in the court of public opinion when it comes to a potential Hall of Fame induction.
I think he's going to have trouble getting into the Hall of Fame. I really do. I think he's been linked with that. You know, the fact the way his career turned around at his age, at ages, certainly lean toward those who have used steroids before. You know, what the heck? I don't know. I think I still go back to him throwing that bat at Piazza in the 2000 World Series. Remember that broken bat?
Oh, yeah.
Usually that's not how most pitchers react to a broken bat. And to pick that thing up and basically heave it, you know, in ferocity or, you know, just great anger, it looked like roid rage. At least it did to me. I remember when I honestly wish Piazza would have came up there and just punched him in the mouth.
Would have been a fun World Series fight.
Okay, and who knows, maybe the Mets would have won another game. But instead they meekly died in 5 after beating the Cardinals. Oh, God. That was talk about a nail on a chalkboard of Tony La Russa overmanaging that 2000 NLCS. I mean, the Mets were somehow lucky to get there. Let me put it this way. Timo Martinez, and who was that pitcher? He played for the Cubs. He was a lefty. What was his name? Oh, Glenn something.
Oh, I know you're talking about, too.
Those guys he won 2 games against the Cardinals as pitching, and Timo Martinez was on base and scored I don't know how many runs against the Cardinals.
It wasn't Glenn Allen Hill, was it?
No, Glenn Allen Hill was a outfielder that came up with the
not that
Blue
guy.
Jays.
Not that Glenn.
Glenn something. I mean, he was a lefty. Cardinals couldn't do a thing against him, and La Russa would not use Mark McGwire. Okay? Even though he had him on the bench there where he could at least hit a home run to tie the game. That's like, no, I want to use him to win the game. You know, right now we're losing. Tying looks real good, Tony. And I don't know. It's the one time Bobby Valentine outmanaged somebody.
That's saying a lot.
Yep.
That having been said, you know, just looking back over the timeline of this Clemens trial, you have to wonder, where did the prosecution really drop the ball at? And I would have to say, when the mistrial initially came up, I believe about 1.5 years ago, I thought the trial was over and done with then, because the prosecution screwed up so bad with the evidence. They had a slam dunk case against Roger Clemens and wound up screwing it up in the 11th hour. And I believe that led to this acquittal.
Let me ask you a question. Does the government really need to go after athletes taking steroids?
Honestly, no.
That's what I mean. It's like, well, it's perjury. I don't care. What do you... Work on the economy. Work on cutting spending. Okay? Work on Afghanistan. All right? Fix Medicare. Fix Social Security. Okay? Deal with real crimes. Some athlete, all right, using a performance-enhancing drug, let the sport take care of him. Okay? Unless they violate their civil rights, okay, then the government doesn't need to be involved in any of this. This is blown up in their face every stinking time.
I think what it is, it's the outcry from, I don't know if I want to call it the outcry from the fans, because I don't think this has been a fan induced controversy more than it has been a media-introduced controversy.
I don't know. I think they're wasting their time, and they're wasting our taxpayer dollars. Okay? How many millions of dollars were spent going after Roger Clemens? Frankly, who gives a shit? Seriously. The best way you handle a Roger Clemens, all right, is the same way they've handled Pete Rose.
Don't put him in the Hall of Fame.
Don't put him in the Hall of Fame. You know, and let him go around and whine about that, about not getting his way for the rest of his life. Okay? Now, if he's smart, he won't do it. All right? But Roger Clemens is a type of, well, I'm not losing, so if I, you know, this is going to make it. Let me tell you something. It's going to be fun when he's up for the Hall of Fame vote and he doesn't get in. And he's going to try to bluster his way into the Hall of Fame.
And I believe he's got, initially, as a player, I believe he's got 15 years to try and get in.
Yeah.
And then after that, you've got the veterans community, and you know how wild that is.
Well, listen, the veterans committee is very upset about anyone associated with performance-enhancing drugs. Now, I go back to, why did these guys take them? Well, to be better players. Well, I'm sorry, I'm not sure I wouldn't have done the same thing if I was in that situation. The number two, it wasn't illegal in their sport at the time. It became illegal, but it wasn't at the time. You know, there are guys in the major leagues in the Hall of Fame who used a spitball. And the fact is, was when they ended the spitball, made it illegal, they grandfathered certain players that continued to use the spitball. Were you aware of that?
I believe I read that somewhere.
Okay, now, I mean, it was only a few pitchers, okay? But basically, the player said, if you take this away from me, I can't play and I can't earn a living. So they allowed those players to continue on. Now, having said that, I just don't, you know, I thought Roger Clemens was a jerk. All right? But being a jerk does not keep you out of the Hall of Fame. And had he pitched for the Cardinals, I may have not thought he was much of a jerk. But considering he pitched for the damn Yankees, you know, and got to pick and choose, you know, where he played and all that bit. You know, listen, the guy got to the point where all he did was pitch at home. He didn't go on road trips.
Wow.
I do remember Barry Bonds thing. You think they would have ever let me do that? Well, for starters, Barry, you were, you know, he tried to make it a racial thing. Of course. But, you know, the fact is, well, Barry, he's not an everyday player like you are.
Duh.
Yeah, he only pitches every 5 days. Frankly, maybe they didn't want him around the other 4 days. Because he had been such a jerk. So, anyway.
Well, having said that, and continuing our theme of sports on trial, let's shift over to the Jerry Sandusky child molestation trial. Of course, Jerry Sandusky, the former defensive coordinator for Penn State University football, long time under the late Joe Paterno, and the evidence against Jerry Sandusky has been very damning, even down to the victims themselves. However, there was an interesting twist I found in the social media that may or may not come to light during the course of the trial, but after having heard this and seen the transcript, I'm wondering, why wasn't this admitted? And it was a particular portion of a Bob Costas interview conducted with Sandusky, I don't think, maybe weeks after the initial findings were made, and the whole Paterno situation right around the end of this past football season started blowing up. And it was the portion regarding the charitable organization that Sandusky created. Costas was trying to put him on the carpet as to say, why is this story regarding your organization not any different from any normal pedophile? And that particular portion of the interview got stricken from the actual testimony. And I'm just trying to wrap my head around that, plus the fact that Mrs. Sandusky allegedly was in the house at the time some of these things went on.
Well, she testified today that never took place while, in their house. Rick Riley wrote a very interesting column. He said 8 of the 10 accusers testified against him, and their stories all match. Now, they're going to start a defense, and listen, everyone is entitled to a defense, and everyone is, if you're not guilty, you should shout it to the mountaintops, okay? But I'll tell you what, this doesn't look good. He fits the profile of child molesters, okay?
I remember an interview earlier in the year, they asked him if he liked boys, and he said, well, I do enjoy their company. And, I mean, a normal person will never say anything even similar.
Well, under those circumstances, if you just take that statement, that is not a statement saying I'm guilty. I like to be around young boys. Well, that means you can enjoy taking them to the park and putting them on the swing set. You know what I mean?
I think the words "tickle monster" being a part of this kind of lends credence to that now.
Yeah, it's just a horrible, horrible situation. But it's something that's played out every day in our courts of law.
I tend to think it was this entire Sandusky situation, not so much trying to come to the end of, potentially the end of his career at Penn State, that ultimately killed Jopa. Because I think he still believes he had been wrongly fired, and I think it ate at him so much that not even a month after the season was over, out goes Jopa.
I'm just trying to figure out how to respond to that statement, and thinking back when it was such a vivid memory. The fact of the matter is, if someone said this about a friend of yours, and you turned it over to the police, and they said we didn't see anything, I think most of us would go, whew, and then never want to talk about it again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's not something you want to talk about if you're going out with your friends or anything.
And this guy was one of your best friends. I think Joe would think, oh, okay, phew, well, I don't have to even think about it. Okay. I don't know. Why didn't... it's just such a hard topic. This is really a hard topic to discuss. I go back to why these kids didn't come out sooner. But I guess they did, and they were ignored. So I don't remember all the details, because they investigated him back in 98, didn't they?
Yeah.
And then I guess there were subsequent investigations from that point on. I don't know. The fact of the matter is, these guys, one guy did his testimony wearing a mask because he didn't want anyone to know who he was. And you can certainly understand that.
Let me put this in perspective.
Okay.
Considering this incident, when it first blew up, came out nearly the same time it came out, or maybe a few months afterwards, the situation at Syracuse with Bernie Fine also pops up. Almost identical, but I think the difference here is you've got accusers who keep flip-flopping the story every 5 seconds, whereas opposed to these 8 accusers are steadfast, all the same story.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if...
Here's the thing. Okay. If he is truly, truly guilty, okay, he should have admitted to it and accepted a plea bargain of some kind and gone to jail. If he is truly guilty, he has put these young men through hell all over again, having to relive this and go before the public and bare their souls about how their lives were ruined. And I hope, and this is what I'm hoping, if this is true, all right, and I don't know, you don't know, we're just hearing what's on the news, okay? I hope they put Jerry Sandusky in the general population. And his life can become the hell that he put these boys through.
What gets me is the amount of media coverage outside of the sports realm that this now jury phase of this case has received. It's like a carnival atmosphere in Happy Valley. And I'm not sure if Jopa lived past when he passed away that he could have even handled that. Who's to say Jopa would have had to be called up to the stand if he had lived to this point? Mm-hmm. You know, that takes a toll on an 80-plus-year-old man.
Yeah, I'm glad he didn't have to be involved. I can say that. I'm glad Jopa didn't have to go through testifying against him. I would just... I still, you want to blame someone, or you want to think, maybe this should have been handled one way or the other. I don't know that Jopa handled it. I don't think this is all Jopa's fault.
I'm on that same wavelength.
And to have fired him the way they did, the thought was, my first thought is, boy, for them to fire him, they must have known something against Jopa. Not that he was involved in any way, but that he totally turned a blind eye. And your question is, well, he should have done more. Okay, well, I think in every child abuse case that's out there, there's somebody that should have done more in every situation. But it really comes down to, is the heinous person that did that to these kids. All right? The heinous person that decided that they had the right to steal these children of their innocence. And that's, in this case, it's Jerry Sandusky. It wasn't Joe Paterno. And nothing has come out where some memo where Joe Paterno said, yeah, it's probably going on, but we're just going to ignore it. There's nothing like that.
That's what kills me about the Board of Regents of Penn State. If there was something in any correspondence between the time this was first reported up to Jopa's firing that led you to believe that Jopa really had something to hide about this, then yeah, Jopa should have been on trial. But there was nothing of the sort. I think it was your basic high-tech lynching of someone that they needed to make an example of to maybe hide their tracks. Because that's the side of the coin that we still don't know about. Is the chain of command on this initial report of molestation on campus grounds. Because this is what it's really centering around is that report by that old quarterback's coach.
I don't know. I'm not sure how to answer.
I mean, and like I said, if there was any evidence of that Jopa was somehow being complicit in this, yes, Jopa should be equally as guilty as an accessory as Sandusky.
Well, that was never an issue.
But then that's what I'm saying.
Though, I mean, I think that's probably when the firing took place and it happened so quickly, I talked to several people and they're like, well, I'll bet there's going to be more stuff that comes out against Jopa. It never has. Nothing ever more is other than I should have done more.
They got us religious conservative folk going, he should be in hell. He should be burning in hell right now. And I still don't get, what did he not do?
He was told about it. It was a friend of his. He turned it over to the campus police. The campus police asked questions and came back and said there was nothing there. And I go back to, I got to think Jopa must have let's never bring this up again.
And how do you know they weren't like, oh, we'll take care of it. You just don't say anything to the press. We'll take care of it. And they never did.
So I don't know.
And that is going to be, I don't want to say a big smear because I think that's being totally unfair to Jopa. But I will say I'll say it's going to be a smudge on what has been a remarkable career in Happy Valley.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's always going to be, things may come out more in the future. We don't know. Who knows?
We'll take a break, and when we come back, some much happier times going on. The NBA Finals are in the mix. But after this short break, we'll celebrate the career of one of the greatest rushing backs of this generation, if not all time, former San Diego Charger LaDanian Tomlinson, in the crosshairs next on the Regular Sports Guys.
When I found out my jeans were made using child labor in sweatshops, I wrote a letter to the company saying, reconsider your labor practices. A few months later, I get a letter back saying thanks for being a loyal customer, and they included a coupon for a 25% discount on their jeans. So I got smart, wrote letters every day to all the stores that carry the brand, asking them to stop supporting the companies who use child labor in sweatshops. And I just kept getting letters back thanking me for my concerns and more coupons for more discounts on more jeans. So I'm telling my friend about it, and she flips out saying that between all the letters and coupons, some paper company cut down a small forest, driving off 2 indigenous tribes, hundreds of endangered animals, killing thousands of plant species, some of which may have contained vaccines for HIV, cancer, and syphilis. Meanwhile, the guys cutting down the trees are 13-year-old kids who will work night and day for months just to save up enough money to buy a pair of jeans made by child labor in sweatshops.
Saving the world isn't easy, but saving a life is. Just 1 pint of blood can save up to 3 lives. Visit bloodsaves.com to learn more. This public service announcement was brought to you by the Ad Council.
Back here on the Regular Sports Guys, rocking and rolling in the barn as we switch from the diamond to the gridiron. Alvin Washington with Stats Guy E.J. Norman. The Sage Eric Norman in the building. We'll get your NBA Finals and Euro 2012 talk coming up before the end of the show. And don't forget, we are online with Sports Talk 24/7 at theregularsportsguys.com. This past week, another soon-to-be birthday boy has hung his cleats up for the final time. Texas native LaDanian Tomlinson has retired as a member of the San Diego Chargers, signing a one-day contract this past Monday. He is the team's all-time leading rusher. He is also the 5th leading rusher by yards in the history of the National Football League. And it seems like the number 5 has followed this man's career from college all the way to now. 5'10", 215 pounds. He was the overall number 5 pick of the 2001 draft, a 5-time Pro Bowl selection, and during his college days at Texas Christian, he got 5 major awards, among them consensus first-team All-American, MVP of the Mobile, Alabama Bowl, the Doak Walker Award for the best running back, the Jim Brown Trophy, and MVP of the Senior Bowl. Best running back never to win the Super Bowl, perhaps, or to even get there. Because remember, this is 5th all time without having gone to the Super Bowl.
Well, I go back to his years with the Chargers. His years with the Jets were not that good.
Well, let me also put a counterbalance in that, because one of his favorite players is also one of the greatest running backs never to see the Super Bowl, and that's Barry Sanders, who's number 3 all time.
I think that there are players that, through bad luck, bad performances on their part, okay, sometimes you have to be lucky to win a championship. You have to be lucky and good. Okay, how good were the Miami Heat last year?
They were good, but they weren't lucky.
Yeah, so what I'm saying. Teams win championships that, I mean, you look at what was that 2000 Ravens that had a great defense and had an offense. Who was their quarterback on that team?
Dilfer?
What, Ethan? Who was that quarterback on the 2000 Ravens?
Trent Dilfer.
Yeah, that's his Super Bowl winning quarterback. No.
Brad Johnson, Buccaneers.
Brad Johnson, Buccaneers. But they had a great defense. Okay. I remember, wasn't Marty Schottenheimer LaDanian Tomlinson's first coach?
Yes.
Okay.
2001.
And one year they went 14-2 and looked unbeatable. And
Until they got to the playoffs.
And then Marty could never win in the playoffs. Now, if you needed to turn around a team, Schottenheimer was your man. But when you got him to the playoffs, he couldn't do anything.
Somebody said in one of the blogs, as a comment, that LaDanian Tomlinson could quite possibly be the best regular season running back in the history of the NFL. Now, I don't know if that's a slap to him or not.
Well, he didn't really get anywhere in the playoffs. Now, but that's the thing about football. How often do you see one guy totally dominate a football field? Can you think of any great player offensively that dominated an entire football field? Or did they all have a lot of help?
Peyton Manning to some degree, but he had some good receivers. I think.
Good receivers and a good running back. Everyone talks about John Elway. What did John Elway do his first few Super Bowls?
He got picked off.
Oh, he stunk up the joint.
Until Terrell Davis came in those last 2 Super Bowls.
There you go.
John Elway was going to be just like Dan Marino, another great quarterback to make the Super Bowl but not win it. Terrell Davis was the reason John Elway won those 2 Super Bowls.
Okay. You look at Tom Brady. Okay, he's won 3 Super Bowls. He's now lost 2 Super Bowls. Okay,
he didn't have Adam Vinatieri those last 2 either.
Could be something to do with it. See, that's where I'm going with this. Football is a game where everything has to work.
Absolutely.
Okay, 11 players on that side of whatever side of the ball you're on matter, and the reason why they all matter was if one isn't good,
they all aren't good.
Well, the team exploits it and can score a touchdown.
That's why you have to respect guys like Emmitt Smith and Walter Payton, and who blocked for them.
Okay, who did Emmitt Smith have? That Walter Payton didn't.
That's where I'm going at.
Yeah.
Emmitt Smith had Moose Johnston, and Walter Payton had Matt Suhey.
You're missing the point. Who did Emmitt Smith have besides Emmitt Smith on the Cowboys?
He had Moose Johnston.
No, you're missing the point. Michael Irvin and Troy Aikman. Troy Aikman. My mind went blank.
The reason I bring up Moose Johnston is because Moose Johnston had been his primary blocking back his entire career.
Okay. When they talk about the big 3, which number is Moose Johnson?
Well, Moose Johnson's definitely number 4.
Thank you very much. Okay. Walter Payton, for 1 year, had a decent quarterback. 1 year. And that was Jim McMahon. Jim McMahon had 1 good year, and everything else was hype. All right? His best years were in Brigham Young. All right? And I like Jim McMahon. I thought he was a gas. Okay? I thought he was funny. But he was not a great quarterback. Okay? Tell me the great Chicago Bears wide receiver.
Willie Gault.
Okay, I said great wide receiver. Name me a Chicago Bears great wide receiver.
Willie Gault is the one that comes to mind.
None of them. They've never had a great wide receiver. Nothing like Michael Irvin. I know you love your Bears, but seriously.
I mean, nothing. Nobody was. None of the receivers were on the level as Michael Irvin. I will give you that.
Okay, so now let's go to the 49ers. Think about what they had.
They had Joe Montana.
Yeah.
They had Jerry Rice.
Yeah.
They had Roger Craig.
Thank you very much. Then you throw in Brent Cooper, Tom Rathman,
Taylor.
John Taylor. I mean, they had talent out the wazoo. Bears never had that. Okay. Now let's go to the Chargers. Ryan Leaf. Thank you very much.
Okay. Man!
They could have had Peyton Manning.
Well, they could have, but Peyton didn't want to go there. No. That was
Eli.
Eli Manning.
Eli Manning didn't want to go there.
Now, I think at some point they'll get to a Super Bowl. Phillip Rivers is a pretty good quarterback.
I say he's getting there. He's getting there.
But he's got to have someone to throw to. And he's got to have someone to hand the ball to. And he's got to have a line that blocks for him. And then you got to have a defense.
Oh, wow.
that can stop the other team. And that's how you win a Super Bowl.
And unfortunately, special teams is what they need.
Yep. No, unfortunately, they've had a rather porous defense the last couple of seasons. But going back to LaDanian Tomlinson.
So what did he have with the Jets?
Not much.
There you go. He wasn't his best. Mark Sanchez is not that good of a quarterback.
And I wouldn't be surprised if Tim Tebow's the starting quarterback at the start of the season over there.
It won't be the start. But at some point, he's going to mess up. They're going to go to Tebow. Tebow will somehow get a victory like he did last year.
He'll suck for the first half and manage to get enough points in the last minute of the fourth quarter.
Yeah, exactly right.
I tell you what, just to show you how much LaDanian Tomlinson meant to the Chargers during his run, he was able to score 31 touchdowns in one season. That wound up being the record as far as rushing touchdowns is concerned. I mean, there is most running backs, 10 to 12 touchdowns will be a good season for them. He had 31.
Oh, he was a great player.
That was just nuts. Now, talk about a twist of fate for you. I mentioned the number 5 pick in the 2001 draft. San Diego made a trade that year with Atlanta. Guess who Atlanta picked with San Diego's pick further down in the draft?
I assume that quarterback that they've got now.
Michael Vick.
Oh, okay.
Michael Vick was the one.
How'd that work out for Atlanta?
Oh, God.
8-8 dream team.
And as a matter of fact, this is what happened. The Chargers selected Tomlinson with the 5th pick, but they initially had the overall number 1. They traded with Atlanta to go further down in the draft. Mm-hmm. That's how Atlanta wound up with Michael Vick as the overall number 1 pick that year. So, again, a rather interesting twist of fate. Unfortunately, neither team has gone to the Super Bowl since that
That's
draft.
why I'm trying to figure out why you're finding this so interesting. It hasn't. It sounds like much ado about nothing.
Well, I mean, it's as much hype as Michael Vick has gotten since he's gotten into the league. And LaDanian Tomlinson he's been a workhorse. I mean,
if you had to pick, which one would you have taken?
I would have taken LaDanian Tomlinson.
Exactly right. So I don't know. I think Michael Vick has been a guy that has not received enough coaching until really now with Andy Reid. And it showed in his life and the way he's led his life. And I think he's turning things around with his life now. But I'll tell you, I never forget this video when all this broke of him out in Vegas with cornrows in his hair. And I'm not sure if he's high or drunk.
Could be both.
Probably both. Yeah, good point. But he totally looked like he didn't even know hardly where he was and that he didn't care.
Sounds like Pac-Man Jones.
Because, I'm getting paid. Yeah, it looked just like Pac-Man. And he's got these handlers, and they're kind of steering him to these places. I'm like, oh, my God, he's either drunk or high. Because no man would walk through a crowd looking that stupid.
Unless you're Plaxico Burress with sweats on.
I still...
A former teammate of LaDanian Tomlinson, I might add.
I'm going to go clubbing. I'm going to take a gun, and when I go to this hot Manhattan club, guess what I'm going to wear?
Sweatsuit.
Sweatpants.
I mean, I wear a nice pair of jeans and plaid shirt just going to downtown. I mean, come on.
And not to mention, I'm going to shoot my own damn self in the leg and go to jail for it.
That's why he's a millionaire, and, he'll have women on him in 5 minutes.
Why he didn't have the safety on? Where was the safety?
And
why
5
would
minutes.
you have the safety off?
And 5 minutes of him walking the club, he's going to have women all over him. He's a wide receiver for the Giants.
I would think you'd want to have... Wouldn't bodyguards say more about you? Big, strong bodyguards. Like, who's that with the bodyguards? Who's that with the Secret Service, so to speak? Okay. Then walking around like some bum wearing a pair of sweatpants and you got a piece in your waistband.
Man, I still to this day just I read the headline and I just crack up. Who would be that stupid? But unfortunately, bada boom, bada bing. Mm-hmm. Getting back to Tomlinson, I mentioned workhorse, 5-time Pro Bowler, 4-time first-team All-Pro, a couple of second-team All-Pros, twice the NFL rushing leader in 06 and 07. He was the Associated Press and Pro Writers MVP. Won the Walter Payton Man of the Year for his charitable doings across San Diego. The following year, he won the Bart Starr Man of the Year award. He was elected to the NFL 2000s All-Decade Team, as well as recently the San Diego Chargers 50th Anniversary Team, along with a more recent selection, the recently deceased Junior Seau. Here's some interesting counterpoint I want to bring up. If LaDanian Tomlinson had been selected during the time Junior Seau was playing on the club, do you think San Diego would have had a better chance beating the Niners the year they went to the Super Bowl?
No.
Why?
Because the Niners were so stinking good.
I think the game would have been a lot closer. I think the game potentially could have gone into overtime, considering because you have to remember the first 5 or 6 years of LaDanian's career were just gangbusters. I mean, he had a rookie season of nearly 1,300 yards.
What score that game?
The Niners won by 3 touchdowns.
No, they did not.
No. I take that back. They won by 5 touchdowns.
So you're telling me he'd have been worth 5 touchdowns?
Yes, I do. I truly do think so.
Stop it. Just stop it. No. No way. The Niners, it was varsity playing JV in that game. The 49ers were just too stinking good. Now, if you want to say that the score would have been 35-21, okay, I'll give you that. But the score was like 49-14. And I don't see how one running back, would have changed a 5-touchdown differential.
I think it would have.
Well, okay, that's fine.
Because looking at his numbers and looking at Natron Means' numbers, LaDanian Tomlinson would have meant much more to that 94 Chargers team than Natron Means was. Because they found a way to, pardon the pun, make the Natron bomb a dud.
Okay. Now, what do you think Lou Gehrig would be doing for the Cardinals this year?
A lot more than what's going on now.
He'd be sitting on the bench wrestling that concussion is what he would be doing.
Well, could be. You see my point? You're trying to say that had he played 15 years before, the Chargers would have done something. Well, yeah. I mean, they would have done more. But the fact of the matter is, had he been on that team, I just don't see them beating the 1994.
I do see that. I would have said it would have been close, and I was right. It was a 3-touchdown spread, 49-26.
Are you sure about that?
I'm looking at it right now. I'm looking at it right now. They were beaten 49-26 by the Niners. And what, if I remember this correctly, is one of only 2 All-California Super Bowls in the history of the NFL.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm just looking this up because I don't remember.
I'm looking at the score right now, 49-26, because Steve Young was the MVP. One of the few times a left-hander has been the MVP of a Super Bowl, because they also had Jerry Rice that same year, who was still in his prime with the Niners.
I need to look that game up because if it was.
I'm looking at it right.
No. I'm just trying to see if they scored some points at the end of the game.
You know, and this was a team with a defense that had Junior Seau, Leslie O'Neal, Reuben Davis, and Sean Lee.
Mm-hmm.
And those 4 by themselves, all pro players. You know, so with that with that and potentially...
Okay, I break this down by quarters.
Mm-hmm.
First quarter, San Francisco 14, San Diego 7. Second quarter, San Francisco 14, San Diego 3. Okay? So it was 28-10 at halftime. then 14-8 and 7-8. Okay, 8-7 San Diego in the fourth quarter. It looks like total domination by the Niners, and in the fourth quarter, they were just trying to run out the clock.
Yep, and
so they could have won that game 56-26.
They could have. Natron Means only had one touchdown in that game, and that was in the first quarter. That made it 14-7. They rendered that offense useless because they had Stan Humphries as a quarterback that year.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. I don't think that your LaDanian Tomlinson would have totally changed the outcome of this game.
I would say it would have made it close. I'm not giving San Diego a win here. Don't get it twisted.
Yes, you were. You're saying they would have gone to overtime and won in overtime.
They could have potentially gone to overtime.
Anything is potential. Stop it. Come on. They lost that thing by 23 points. You're going to tell me
LaDanian Tomlinson
they would have scored 24.
LaDanian Tomlinson could have been the difference.
Oh, I'm sorry. Where was the Charger defense in this game?
Charger defense wouldn't have been out there if you had LaDanian Tomlinson.
Oh, they would have just.
And here's why I say that.
Oh, please.
LaDanian Tomlinson is someone that could chew up a possession for you.
Yeah. I'm not saying he wouldn't have done that. I'm just saying he's not going to be worth 24 points.
You never know.
Wow, no. Well, not when you do with 20-year-old hypotheticals.
No, but let's think about this for a moment. Let's think about this for a moment. If LaDanian Tomlinson would have been on this 94 San Diego Chargers team.
How old was he in 1994?
14? If that.
Do you realize where you've taken this conversation?
But I'm just for debate's sake. Let's say LaDanian Tomlinson would have been old enough to play on this 1994 team. And he was the lead back. I honestly feel that 49 points would not be up there by San Francisco.
What if Joe Montana had been the quarterback instead of Steve Young?
Still wouldn't have been 49 points. Steve Young just had weapons. Steve Young had weapons up the wazoo. And I'll show you, just in the games in the box score, Jerry Rice, 44-yard catch. Ricky Waters, 51-yard catch. This is a running back.
Yes, I know who Ricky Waters is.
William Floyd, 5-yard catch. Ricky Waters, 8-yard catch.
You can lower your voice at
Jerry Rice, 15-yard catch. Jerry Rice, another catch, this time from 7 out.
So, can you help me out here? Just answer one little question. Mm-hmm. Which of these passes would LaDanian Tomlinson have intercepted? Sorry, what? I'm sorry.
LaDanian Tomlinson is a running back.
So he doesn't play defense, so no one was stopping. He wouldn't have been stopping the 49ers unless the Chargers already had the ball.
And I'll give you a great parallel here. Super Bowl 41.
Yeah.
Joseph Adai on that team, along with Peyton Manning, played a masterful second half that kept the ball away from the Bears' offense, because you can't score if you don't have the football.
So you're telling me, had LaDanian Tomlinson been there, he would never have fumbled. Stan Humphries would never have been intercepted. They would have just marched down the field, and the 49ers would have done nothing to stop them.
I guarantee you the score would not have been a 3-touchdown lopsided loss. That I guarantee you it would not have been. I would venture to say that it would have been somewhere along the lines of, considering San Francisco's offense, along the lines of maybe 35-32. Again.
I'm sorry.
Again, giving respect to San Francisco's offense.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am.
How? They scored 49 points. You're saying, well, they might have scored 35. Do you get? Does it make it take it if you score a touchdown, or does the other team get the ball?
I know the other team gets the ball.
All right,
but the less times the less opportunities an offense is given to get on the field. Again, going back to Indianapolis versus Chicago in Super Bowl 41, the less chances they have to score.
What if the Bears had Walter Payton in Super Bowl 41?
Could have been a different story.
Well, yes. Even though he was already dead.
I know. I understand that. Okay. It would have been a different story there. That's the same reason I bring up LaDanian Tomlinson for the same argument.
Okay. You have finally now made me want to talk about soccer. After this conversation, I'm ready to talk soccer.
And we will come.
Jesus Christ.
Euro 2012 comes your way next, and some surprises going into the knockout round. We'll go from the gridiron to the pitch next on the Regular Sports Guys.
Hello?
It's speed walking day.
Dorothy? You're breaking up.
Did I mention we'd be slowing down when we pass the court where those fine brothers play ball?
I heard that.
Reduce your risk of cancer, diabetes, heart disease, and stroke. Get active, eat right, and maybe even run into Mr. Right. Isn't sisterhood beautiful? For more information, go to everydaychoices.org. Brought to you by the American Cancer Society, the American Diabetes Association, the American Heart Association, the Ad Council, and this station.
Here on the Regular Sports Guys, heading down into the home stretch as we go from the gridiron to the pitch, and it has been a wild one over in the Eastern Bloc. Alvin Washington alongside statsman and now soccer expert E.J. Norman. Our executive producer, the sage Eric Norman, right in shotgun as always. And don't forget, we are online 24/7 at theregularsportsguys.com. Euro 2012 has been one of the wildest group stages I think we've seen in recent memory, especially when you're talking about teams that should have won to get to the next round and didn't. Among them, Denmark in the group of death. I saw them and I saw Germany. I take that back. I saw the Netherlands and the Germans heading to the next round. The Netherlands straight stunk up the joint with 3 losses. How, I don't know. After just being in the World Cup Championship a mere 2 years ago. Portugal comes out of nowhere. They pick up the transfer to the next round. Croatia. I had it as my dark horse because I thought, maybe this could be the tournament to really give them that solid name that you need and that solid momentum going into the World Cup qualifiers later on this year. And, that one disappointing loss they had in group play just really knocked their sails out.
Yeah, I had them as the dark horse as well. I thought they had a good team. I thought if the Czech Republic could advance, surely Croatia could have. Yeah, I was amazed that Russia, after their start they had, didn't make it.
Yeah, Greece is on to the round of 8, strangely enough, considering the political strife going on over there. But, sometimes this game gets wrapped up in such trivialities that you really forget there's a game going on out there. Ask Russia and Poland from their contest. Woo!
Oh, yeah.
Wow, that was ugly. England, boy, what a great time for Wayne Rooney to come back off of suspension with a big-time header this week.
Yeah, just earlier today, got that big header against Ukraine. Though there was a possible ghost goal for Ukraine, which could have helped their cause. But, again, this is another subject we have now for goal line technology.
Because if that was the case, and if that would have ended as a tie, you're looking at a three-way tie for first place. Because with France's loss to Sweden 2-0, England tying Ukraine, all three of them would have had 4 points, which then you now go to goal differential. And that's where things get a little jumbled up.
And if they're tied on goal differential, then you have head-to-head.
Mm-hmm.
I think eventually, even if it's tied on head-to-head somehow, they'll just flip a coin.
But as it stands, it's England and France coming out of Group D, Spain and Italy out of Group C. I think we called that one correctly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, besides Croatia being the dark horse, then yeah, we pretty much picked that.
Yeah, I think that was the only group we've called correctly this entire tournament.
Mm-hmm.
Now we go to the knockout round. Now things get a bit interesting because you've got 90 minutes, and that's it. You don't get it done. You don't get it done.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, and this, if you're tied, you can't just tie. You have to win or lose because it'll go in extra time and then penalty kicks, and nobody wants to go to penalty kicks. You can train as much as you want, but penalty kicks, you cannot train yourself for the drama and what could possibly happen, the atmosphere, you name it.
Up to you're talking about 6 feet to either glory, immortality, or just some agonizing nightmares.
Yeah, you blast over the post, and your next job is, instead of captain of England, you're mowing a lawn in Brighton or something.
I bring this over to the Sage, and as much as England has been maligned over the last 10, 15 years on the international scene, just from a psyche standpoint, what this group win means to the Three Lions.
My thoughts on the English team is that they generally have too many stars and not enough players.
That was the problem with the World Cup is, too many Chiefs, not enough Indians.
Yeah. Now, today they got Wayne Rooney back. He scored their only goal. And when you got a player like Wayne Rooney, anything can happen. But I have the feeling, like every year that I've watched England play, they're going to get weighed down with all the hype, and they're not going to do anything.
The English have this air about them that, because they invented the sport, they should win everything.
Well, it's even beyond that. They've got the biggest, most popular soccer league.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, it's like they really believe that they own soccer. Okay.
One problem. There's a lot of internationals in that same league as well.
Yeah, a lot of them, they're Spanish, there's Italian. I think on Arsenal, there's maybe 2 or 3 actually English players.
Right. So
I can probably name them right now.
Having said that, they get all this hype, but they don't come through.
And that's why you look at them. Again, the melodies that they've had over the last 2-3 World Cups and other international tournaments, and then you weigh that against what Germany has done in that same time span, because Germany has had a World Cup championship. Matter of fact, 2 of them.
3.
Yeah, they've had 3. I just think that England gets all this hype. They've got a very sensationalistic press that is in English, so we can read it. All right. While the Lisbon papers, well, I don't read Portuguese, so it really doesn't matter. I don't read German, even though I am German, So you got all that hype coming out of England. And let's face it, the biggest issue a couple years ago wasn't the players, it was their wives and girlfriends, the wags.
Yeah, 2006 especially.
And a lot of that had to do with Posh Spice. So
Posh Spice, Cheryl Cole,
and what they were wearing or what they weren't wearing or how little they were wearing, and all they were doing is shopping and doing their nails, and there's all this. And, of course, then their husbands had to come home from each day practice and have to put up with them. That's why in 2010, was it? Who's that Italian coach they had?
Oh, Fabio Capello.
No wives and girlfriends. Nothing. You can see him once a week on Wednesdays.
Mm-hmm. He tried to come down with an iron fist, and he resigned just a few weeks before this tournament.
Mm-hmm. So, I don't know.
Here's what I'm wondering. Considering next to Wayne Rooney, the only other major English star of late being David Beckham, Do you think the omission from the Euro team of Beckham gives England a little bit better chance psychologically to come together as a team and now they're in a knockout round, potentially win this thing?
No. The reason why Beckham's been left off the team is he's not good enough anymore.
And he's playing right now in L.A. And that'd be just such a long... I can imagine how long that flight would be from Los Angeles to Warsaw or Kiev.
True.
That having been said, die Mannschaft. Let's look at this I call a workhorse in the international community, because every time you see them, they roll through group. They get at least to the quarterfinals, if not the final four of every major international tournament that they have been in the last 25 to 30 years.
What are you talking about?
Germany. Die Mannschaft. That's the nickname of Germany.
Say that again.
Die Mannschaft.
Mannschaft.
Oh, all right.
Or the Fußballbund.
That one I've heard.
Yeah.
The machine, I believe, is what it translates to. But that's what they've been. They have been a soccer machine. You just interchange a few players here and there, but they continue to be one of the best in the world, alongside the return of the Italians. And I see the Italians in this now knockout round as now the sleeper, as opposed to Croatia in the group stages, because Italy has been kind of on the downside a little bit, and to see them here, you got to give them as equal an opportunity as anybody else.
Well, they probably have one of the best defenses in the tournament left, besides maybe Greece. I think especially with them having such a bad World Cup, which they were better than France, but still they exited the group stage just 2 years ago. So people, I think, were really sleeping on them.
Do you think Greece's defense might be able to thwart Germany coming up to this weekend's knockout round game?
No.
I think they'll frustrate them to some degree. It could be scoreless at the half, but Germany's going to eventually break through.
Because this is how the matchups go down. Germany's going to take on Greece. Czech Republic has Portugal. I don't see the Czech Republic even standing a single chance against this club. So Portugal right now is on a roll.
Especially with Ronaldo scoring the 2 goals against Holland. I got to think he would just tear them up.
Spain and France. I think this is more France's statement game than it is Spain's, for the simple fact they're still trying to come off of that debacle from 2 years ago.
They're not going to beat Spain.
This is my potential upset game, but I'll pick Spain. But like I said, potential upset, so France has a potential to pull it out.
England and Italy, 2 long-time international powers with something to prove. I think that may be one of the 4 knockout rounds that goes extra time. If not penalties.
Go extra time. You talking about an extra 20 minutes?
Is that we did like overtime. 2 15-minute periods that they have to play. So after 120 minutes of total time, they go to PKs.
Oh, okay. I think it's England's this year. I think Italy hasn't shown anything.
I think I'm leaning with England. Because I think England's just played a better game. The first 2 Italian games, they had a 1-0 lead, and they let the other guys tie, like against Croatia.
Well, they got
Spain.
Rooney back, and he's got something.
They got Rooney back, that's true. And Ashley Young dives as much as any Italian player.
Oh, wow. All right, that having been said, let's come back stateside. The NBA Finals were 3 games in, and right now the Miami Heat are where they were last year at this time, up 2 games to 1. Only last year, Dallas came back to beat them 4 games to 2, having won the last 3. Different circumstances now with the Oklahoma City Thunder. You basically have 2 young clubs with budding superstar talent. However, the way things are looking right now, you have to figure the arrow kind of favors LeBron and his group a little bit more because they've been here before as a trio. They understand now what it takes to get to that next level. Do they run the gauntlet at home and close this out? I think Kevin Durant may have one more good game and then send it back to Oklahoma City.
It depends on tonight. If Miami wins tonight, I think it's theirs. I just don't see them losing 3 straight games to the Thunder.
They have too much experience from last year.
If the Thunder win tonight, then I think it still can be anybody's series. And it's certainly they get some momentum, and they do get to go back home for a Game 6, possibly to tie, if not to win at all. But it comes down to tonight. And I will say this. It will, of course, go back to those foul calls. What's the can you look up what the difference in free throws is so far in the series? Because I'm telling you, LeBron is getting the Michael Jordan treatment on some of his calls.
You know, I've seen that pop up throughout the course of the series, and I got to tell you, it gets nerve-wracking sometimes when you see these officials do this. I mean, why? Let the kids play for once. Free throws in Game 3. Oklahoma City attempted 24. Miami attempted 35. LeBron went 6 for 8 from the foul line in that game.
What was game 1 and 2? I mean, do you have that in front of you?
I'm going back to those now because I think this is where maybe,
especially Game 2. What was Game 2's free throws?
Game 2. The Heat had 25 free throws, LeBron James making all 12 of his, while Oklahoma City attempted 26.
Okay, well, that wasn't that much different.
I think the difference in that game is LeBron James made all of his free throws.
Mm-hmm.
Because if he falters or Dwayne Wade falters, that's an Oklahoma City win.
Yeah. Well, it'll come down to tonight. I mean, really, like I said, I just don't see. If the Thunder lose tonight, I can't see them winning games 5, 6, and 7.
And that's tough. I mean, you haven't seen too many 3-1 leads go up in smoke in the finals, if you have seen them at all.
I'm really hoping. I hope the Thunder win tonight, just so I can hear the angst. and just to see Stephen A. Smith have his, oh my God, this is the end of the world, which either way he goes, whoever he's rooting for. I mean, you know, and how is this so, you know, everyone is at fault. ESPN has got to declare that somebody is at fault for this loss.
And it's usually LeBron. Like, he went 6 for 9 in free throws.
LeBron or Wade.
He cannot perform in the clutch.
You know, and it's just like, oh my goodness. You know, just play the games. I just don't remember back in the 80s, for instance, whose fault it was between the Celtics and the Lakers. You know, there wasn't all this fault finding.
Well, you just didn't have, again, you didn't have all this media proliferation.
That's true. That's
you
good.
do now.
Yeah, that's
exactly. You've got. I mean, let's face this. Back in the 1980s, when the NBA was first starting to get its legs, the only real folk that on a national level that were talking about the league were the play-by-play guys. Mm-hmm. Brent Musburger, Dick Stockton.
Well, you read it. It was in the paper. Mm-hmm. It was in the columns. It was the local press. Now we've got to have Stephen A. Smith, then we've got to have Chris Broussard, then we've got to have Tim Legler, then of course
Michael
Wilbon, John Barry's got to say something. Magic has to say something.
Skip Bayless, Colin Cowherd.
Yeah, I mean, they've all got to have some emphatic statement to define the moment.
You went from reading about it to a gaggle of talking heads.
Mm-hmm. There's no point in following because eventually there's so much data or whatever going on about the game that you'll hear it anyway.
Yeah.
You don't have to read or hear anything.
But I think what it also lends to is the fact that you have this insider mentality now. You got to break this particular set of information first before the other big guys get it.
I guess you're right.
And not to mention, you have social media. I think it really helps because I barely watch the NBA, and I'll be on a social website and I'll see something like, "What are you doing?"
Well, it's even like Twitter. Okay, so and so said this on Twitter. So, what do you do? Let's put it this way. If LeBron screws up, there's going to be some NBA player that's going to throw out a tweet.
Shoot, there's going to be some knucklehead from somewhere in an outpost is going to throw out a tweet about this.
Okay, but
how many times
ESPN is not going to report Paul Pierce's tweet or Kevin Garnett's tweet on the matter. Okay, but ESPN SportsCenter will breathlessly tell you what they said. Who cares? I mean, seriously. It doesn't matter. Now, some people say, oh, no, all these voices, all these discussions, all they make for the good of the game. I could
really?
I don't see it, but that's me.
Well, we talked about all the racist tweets, from these last playoffs or so.
And what gets me is we can have all this hyperbole over the NBA Finals, and you might hear maybe 1/8 of that during the Stanley Cup playoffs, save the Game 7 winner against Boston by Joel Ward of the Capitals. That just set off a firestorm of God knows what.
See, I don't. You say it started off a firestorm. I don't even remember it, and I really don't care.
And that's what I'm talking about.
I'm apathetic about the whole thing.
It was pathetic then. It's pathetic now. I'm not sure 10 years from now that'll be remembered, if 20 years from now. But it's there. The situation is out there. It's reported on. Somebody will probably bring it up a little bit later on. I don't know. What I do know is we're going to end with a great feel-good story from the world of college baseball. You can talk about your LSUs, you can talk about your South Carolinas, you can talk about your UCLAs, but the darling of this year's College World Series is a small school from the island of Manhattan known as Stony Brook. The champions of the American East Conference made it to Omaha for the first time in school history and conference history.
Can you even build a baseball field in Manhattan?
They're actually more on Long Island than Manhattan.
So I can see that island.
They've got a school in Manhattan, but the actual campus is on Long Island. So, sorry to say that.
That having been said, the Seawolves have been made the media darlings this week. Now, granted, they got blasted out of the frame in their first two games, having been outscored 24-3, but I don't think these kids care. And this is the essence of sports that a lot of people feel may be missing, is the first-time kids making it to the big dance. And people all over Omaha have taken to Stony Brook like they've taken to some of the other Cinderellas as of late.
You realize they're out.
Well, that's why I said that. But the experience for them, I'm quite sure those who are seniors will never forget it, because as one person said, it'll never happen again.
But they've got 7 draft picks. They've got talent. They're good.
No, that's why they made it.
So our tip of the cap here, the regular sports guys, to the Stony Brook Seawolves for making this year's College World Series, and fellow Cinderella team Kent State. First time since 1976 that the Mid-America Conference represented.
Are they still in it?
I believe they are. They did win a game this past week. With that in mind, we bid adieu once again from the barn on this edition of the Regular Sports Guys. And thanks once again to my stats guy, E.J. Norman, and the man that makes it happen each and every week, our executive producer, the sage Eric Norman. I'm Alvin Washington, and you have been listening to a presentation of the Mid-America Broadcast Network, copyright 2012. Don't forget, Sports Talk 24/7. Catch us online at theregularsportsguys.com. Until next week, stay cool, cheer on your favorite team respectfully, and for now, the barn is closed.
This is the Regular Sports Guys.